It is great to be with you all in the house of the Lord. Good morning. Yeah, I love that. I love what God is doing. We are in our series on the 7 deadly sins and 7 virtues. It's fun. And of course, now that we have a growing preaching team, it's really cool to be able to communicate with other teaching pastors and hearing what they're doing and their take on these texts as well. And so this morning, as we work through this, there's one primary idea that's kind of this mantra arc through the whole series. And so I want to review this really fast. And it's basically this idea. There's spiritual warfare over your daily. There is spiritual warfare over your daily rhythms. There just is. There's a ton of spiritual warfare over your daily rhythms. And not just that, we are aware, the more that we lean into God and His awareness and spiritual warfare and understanding how that works, we begin to understand that Satan aims to steadily increase busyness, all while subtly weaving destructive rhythms and habits into your life. In fact, the reality is, and I've said this many times, if you've been a part of the church for a number of years, this is one of the Mike-isms. That's okay, you can make fun of me. But it's this: if Satan can't steal your heart, he'll steal your... If Satan can't steal your heart, he'll steal your time. He's going to make you so incredibly busy that you don't have the time. You can't find the time to prioritize the things that actually give you life. The enemy is a master at slowly suffocating your spiritual rhythms. And it all happens through important busyness. And one day you wake up and you're like, man, I haven't spent time with the Lord in devotions in days or weeks. I haven't spent time in prayer in days or weeks. And what we discovered too, and we talked about this in more detail a few weeks ago, but the weapon that we have against this, our offensive weapon, fasting. Fasting is our offensive weapon. And so what we do, what is fasting as a whole? Of course, we're in the Lenten season. And so fasting as a whole is literally the practice of saying no to something so that you can fill that time with something spiritually deep and revitalizing. So I'm saying no to a busyness and yes to the Spirit. Listen, fasting is not, here, look at me, I love you. Fasting is not saying no to a worldly thing so you can yes to Netflix binging. That's not fasting. That's one sinful busyness, maybe not even sinful necessarily, but depending on what you're watching. But it could be one busyness that you're supplementing another busyness for. Real fasting is saying no to a busyness so that you can say yes to the presence of God. Fasting is our spiritual offensive weapon in this. Throughout history, we've talked about this the last few weeks. Throughout history, Christians have talked about 2 sets of spiritual habits. So this is kind of a series overview review. Virtues are life-giving habits that draw us closer to God. So if you like to study through history, especially for me back in grad school, and especially my doctoral work, I loved the Summa. I'm a huge fan of that work. And so what you find as you read through the church historians is this idea that life-giving habits, they draw us closer to God. These are the virtues. Virtues are rhythms that draw us closer to God. And then the other side of it are the deadly sins. Deadly sins can be a single thing, but most of the time what you find deadly sins practiced, they are life-draining habits that pull us away from Him. Virtues are the habits and rhythms that lean us into the Lord. Deadly sins are the habits and rhythms that lean us away from the Lord. Today we're going to talk about sloth. Sloth. What a fun word, sloth. When you think of sloth, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Animals. Awesome. Maybe we should have that like as on the screen, just a picture of a sloth. Now, if you're listening to wonderful theologians teach on even today, or even my professors, they would call it sloth. 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 I don't know. Maybe they just want to separate themselves from the animal. I have no idea. But sloth, right? Like even the name of the animal is fascinating. It's this idea, most people when they think of it, they think of laziness. Slothful, slow out of bed, slow to get stuff done, sloth the animal, mirrored on top of somebody that's driving you nuts because they're just not very productive. What do we mean by sloth? Well, many of you know I grew up in a smaller community, at least a lot smaller than Indianapolis. And growing up in a small community, you kind of, I remember, I have memories. It's like you get pulled over as a high school student and you roll down your window and the cop leans over and says, Michael, I'm calling your dad. Like everybody knows everybody in a small town. And feeling called into ministry from a smaller community, I definitely was like wide-eyed, optimistic. I got my first job working in the city. And I remember, I've been in the city now for 20 plus years, a couple of different cities, here for almost 14. And then even Dallas, Texas before coming up here. And the first time I landed into a city as a young, passionate, early 20, called to ministry, excited to make a difference, individual, I remember driving down the road. I'd already dropped my wife off, didn't have any kids yet. And I was driving down the road and I saw two people. I thought they were homeless. It was a man and a woman. I assumed they were married. Now looking back, there's a lot of things I assumed that I had no way of knowing. And so I pulled over, and in my young, optimistic, passionate way of viewing my calling to the city as a country boy, called to the city, I remember I pulled over, rolled down my window, started talking with this guy and this girl, got into a long conversation, and so I was like, hey, well, do you guys need anything? They're like, well, we're trying to go to this location. I was like, hey, hop in. And so I got a couple of people off the street into my car. This was not the first time I would do this, by the way. And as a young, passionate, small-town guy, unbelievably wide-eyed, optimistic, I'm going to change the world as I feel called to do ministry in the city from the small town. So they hop in the car, and I'm driving down the road, and I just remember vividly driving down the road, and I'm like, I remember thinking, wow, these people smell really bad. And as I'm driving down the road, there were a few other smells I would later learn with enough ministry experience. One was weed for sure. The other one was just BO off the charts. It was filling my car. I remember driving down the road thinking, I'm gonna have to crack the windows. I might pass out. Like, this is unbelievably strong. And I'm also like sharing the gospel, fully convinced I'm gonna make a massive difference in their life. I'm way optimistic. As I finally land at this location, I have a little bit more conversation with them, and it becomes really clear these two individuals have incredible mental health issues. Like, the conversation just kind of circles back on itself over and over and over again. I finally let them out of the car. I gave them a little bit of money, prayed with them. I'm believing for miracles in their life, 24 years old, young guy, passionate, and sent them on their way. I did those kinds of things a few more times as a young, called into ministry from the small town pastor. And I remember the church I was working in, I bumped into a lady in the church who was a little bit older and had grown up in the city as a follower of Jesus. And she began to tell me, okay, don't miss this. Oh, Pastor Mike, you just don't get it. So many of these people that are panhandling on the side of the road, they're not even really homeless. Some of them just fake it. They figured out a way to make money. And I was like, oh, really? And she was like, so many of these people that are on the side of the road, even if you do give them money, you're going to end up just feeding their addiction. They're going to take it and go buy alcohol or drugs. You're going to, in a sense, enable their addiction and their brokenness. And I was like, oh, that would make the smells make sense now. Oh, Pastor Mike, there are so many things that are available for people in the city if they would just go take advantage of it. But the reality is they don't take advantage of it. And so they're trying to take advantage of you. And after a few conversations on a few Sunday mornings, this early 20-year-old, young, extremely passionate to do ministry in the city from the small town pastor, I remember vividly pulling up to an intersection, looking at the people begging on the side of the road and thinking, they might be faking it, or I might enable them, or they might have mental health issues, and it's probably not safe for them or for me. And I remember having this inner dialogue as I choose, as the car, getting closer, as I choose to change lanes away from the individual. And I remember, man, as I did that, a few times, there's a few inner dialogue. I see the homeless person on the side of the road. I talk myself out of it through reason. And then eventually I got to the point where I would just not notice them at all anymore. And so person after person after person, you learn to just tune it out over time. And here's the big thing that I have learned looking back on that wide-eyed, excited, from the small town pastor called to the city, unbelievably overwhelmed with optimism and disappointment at the same time. Here's what I learned. My once burning spiritual passion, don't miss this. My once burning spiritual passion slowly faded into something much more dangerous. Indifference. I learned to not care. I learned to not see them. See, here's the thing that's really interesting. If you study the whole idea of sloth or sloth through history, this is what you find. Sloth isn't really a synonym for laziness. That's not what it's intended to be understood as when you read through history. When you read through history, what you find is sloth, it's an indifference to spiritual things. That's what it is. You learn to be indifferent to spiritual things. Aquinas says it really well. Aquinas says it like this. He defines sloth or sloth as sorrow at the divine good. Bishop Barron, brilliant philosopher and priest, says it like this. Sloth is sleepiness of the soul. Karl Barth says it like this. He says that sloth or sloth, that spiritual indifference, I just don't really care that much anymore. He says that spiritual indifference, it is the sin of our time. It is the sin of our time. You see, one of the enemy's greatest weapons is to turn you into the kind of person, oh my goodness, don't miss this, is to turn you into the kind of person where if you were interviewed, like if I was interviewed at that time in my life after I was talked out of it, if I was interviewed and they'd be like, do you care about the homeless? I would say yes. But in practice, I've been taught to ignore them. The enemy's greatest tool is to kind of bypass that mental barrier and by practice get you to already be disobedient. That's sloth. Spiritual indifference. Spiritual indifference. With this in mind, I want to go to the text. We're going to go back to King David. Man, I wish I could hop in the DeLorean and go back in time, and I wish I could sit with King David, right, during some of his psalm writing. But Psalm 51 says this, restore to me the joy of whose salvation? It's a prayer, right? Restore to me the joy of your salvation and uphold within me a willing spirit. Man, you guys, King David knew what must be at the core of his relationship with God. And what's at the core of his relationship with God? It is rightly aimed and rightly fed passion. That is the core of what should be at our relationship with God. Rightly aimed and rightly fed passion. Let me just ask it explicitly. What makes spiritual slothfulness or slothfulness, what makes it such an abomination? And to be clear, let me just say this really clear. Spiritual sleepiness, the saints of the past included in the 7 deadly sins. Let that set in. This spiritual sleepiness is included in the 7 deadly sins. So why? Why is that spiritual laziness such an abomination? Well, here's the idea, and this is from Aquinas. This is it right here. Sloth is sin against love. Sloth is a sin against love. To be slothful is to turn numb to the passions of God. Sloth is a sin against love. Now, even if we take that idea all the way back from like the Summa Theologica and we overlay it maybe in today's context, I think I can give you an example that might make it a little more palatable, and it's this. I want you to imagine that your spouse just goes out of the way to prepare an amazing evening just to say, I love you. So pretend like your spouse goes out and gets your favorite food that you love to eat, or maybe even prepares it herself or himself. And they clean the whole house up. All the chores are done. Things are taken care of. The whole works. I mean, everything is beautiful. It's your favorite food to eat. They've gone out of the way. They maybe even planned this like surprise vacation that they're going to share with you at some point. It's just like a night to remember. And your spouse shows up, walks in the house, and they look at all that's been done, and they look at you and go, oh, I'd honestly rather just watch basketball than hang out with you. Now, for those that have had that happen, don't miss what I'm about to say. Aquinas believed that sloth is a sin against love. You have numbed your passions. And it is incredibly destructive. Slothful people, to be really clear, slothful people can be very, very busy people. Did you know that? Because it's not just laziness. That's not what I mean. Slothful people can be busy people. This is especially true in our modern day. We are busy letting the enemy distract us from the passions of God. We're incredibly busy letting the enemy distract us ultimately from even the passions of God. In fact, slothful people, and turn to your neighbor and say, Pastor loves you. This one might sting a little bit. Turn to your neighbor, Pastor loves you. Just tell him, Pastor loves you. Pastor loves you. Pastor loves you. The Lord loves you. The Lord loves you. Pastor loves you. Okay, this one might sting a little bit. I love you. Here we go. Are you ready? Slothful or slothful people tend to play the victim. They're always playing the victim card. And this is how it sounds. Are you ready? They can't control the sports schedule of their kids. Well, they're kind of right? They can't control the kind of shows that they like to watch. I mean, they're like, Pastor Mike, I know you told me check out The Chosen, but in reality, Desperate Housewives or whatever. Is that still the show that people care about? Am I just old? I don't know. And so but that's way more interesting to me. And I'd rather watch and I can't help what I like. They can't control the kind of shows they like to watch. Slothful people will often say things like this. They can't control the kind of friends they like to hang out with. They're like, you know what, Pastor Mike, I would love to go to the small group, but honestly, I don't know. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. I have way more fun at the bar with my friends. I can't, just the way I am. They can't control their sports schedule. They can't control the kind of shows they like to watch. They can't control the kind of friends they like to hang out with. In a sense, what you find all through history when the church fathers and mothers are writing about slothfulness, this is the message that they're always saying. Slothful people are always saying this. Life controls them. They can't help it. That's the mantra, the drum that the slothful person is always banging. Just the way I can't help it, just the way I am. That wouldn't be the first time I would deal with homeless people. It'd be many times over because I'm a pastor in the city. But I remember it was years later, so I went, if I'm just confessing honestly, I went for a long period of time where I basically just ignored the people on the side of the road. And when I did see them and lock eyes with them, I was very good at justifying away why I should ignore them. Let me say that again. I was very good at justifying away why I should ignore them. And in a vacuum, all of my excuses are actually correct. There are people that abuse it. They will probably use these gifts, especially if it's money, in ways that are inappropriate. They really do have mental health issues, right? I'm not in a vacuum. I'm not necessarily wrong, but I got so good at those excuses, I learned to be indifferent to the moment. So not just justify it away, but learn to ignore it. And then when I did see it, I justified away again. Years later, it's after I moved here. So I moved to Indianapolis. And when I was here, I'm a part of an accountability group of guys, and we get together about every year. We've been together for a long time, passionate Christian guys. So everybody needs somebody in which they hold no secrets, right? You need somebody in your life where you hold no secrets. They can see everything. They understand everything. Your finances, your wealth, which you look at on your computer, they have access to absolutely everything. I think, my personal opinion, everybody needs somebody in which you hold no secrets. So my accountability group of guys, for years and years and years, all the way back into college, we just live in total transparency with each other and been doing it for a long, long time. And so every year we get together, and we were getting together again just to share transparently. What we do is we're usually together for a couple of days, and we just take turns. Literally, it's like you're in the hot seat, and we'd hang out, and we just share for a couple of days away from all our families, and we share what's on our heart, where we're at, what's going on, our struggles, and then they can ask any question they want, and we have to be totally transparent about it, and then we pray over each person. That's what we do. Been doing it for years. So I'm gathered together with my accountability group of guys, and while we're hanging out together, dude, I'm telling you, I am certain this was the work of the Holy Spirit. This lady, probably in her 30s, comes walking up to us, to me specifically. And even now, I was actually going over my notes again last night, and I started weeping because it dawned on me. I wondered, like an angel in disguise. And this homeless lady, probably in her 30s, comes walking up to me, and visually, I've been around enough people now in the city and doing city ministry, I'm fairly certain she was a meth addict, or at least appeared to be. Shriveled away. If you've been around people like that, just shriveled away. You could see in her, she used to be beautiful. And she walked up to me, head down, frail, small, her voice shaking, and she goes into some story about I lost my, whatever. And as I'm listening to the story, what's running through my head is that conversation I had with that wonderful long-term Christian lady in the city church who justified away. So I'm thinking, oh, that story's probably fake. It's probably not real. This is running through the back of my mind. Probably not here. It's probably fake. It's probably not true. And then I was like, and even if it is somewhat true, if I give her any money, she's clearly going to use it for something incredibly inappropriate. All this is running through my head as she starts talking to me. And for whatever reason, in that moment, man, I just thought, all right, Lord, this is like your internal dialogue. Sometimes it's like you're having a conversation and then you're arguing with God back here. I don't know if you've ever had that happen. So I'm in this conversation with her, and I'm like, all right, Lord, what do you want me to do? And I felt like the Lord, lit a match. And it's like the tinder in my heart was soft enough because I'd been with these accountability guys maybe, I don't know. But the Lord just, struck it, and just a revived passion was woken up in a moment. And so she's going through her story, and I started tearing up. And as she's sharing hers, and so I reached down, and I took her little hand, and I pulled it up like this, and I put my hands on hers. This is a true story. Put my hands on hers. And because, now here's the thing. She never looked at me once the whole time she was sharing her story. She was like this, just sharing her story to us. So I looked down at her, and I was like, look at me. She lifts her head. It makes me cry every time. What's wrong with me? Maybe that's a good thing. Don't change it. Whatever. She looks up at me, and I look deep in her eyes, and you just see hurt. You see lost. You see confusion. You see addiction. You see all this stuff. I looked in her eyes, and I was like, look at me. Look at me. She looks at me, this tiny little fragile thing. I held her hand, and I said, God sees you. And I see you. And I want you to know you are loved. And she looks at me and she just starts weeping. And so I pray over her. I give her money. I do all the things that lady taught me not to do, right? I gave her money, a little bit of money, not a lot, but a little bit of money. I prayed over her. The whole works, it got done. She ended up leaving. But even though she ended up leaving, God absolutely stayed my heart in a new way. And for the first time, it dawned on me, this generosity to the poor isn't just about the poor. It is about awakening rightly aimed spiritual passion in me. My generosity is about waking up my heart too. It's not just about them. I need the discipline of aiming my passions rightly to wake up my own passionate heart and make sure I don't slip into the devastating sin of sloth and become spiritually indifferent to the things that Jesus loves so deeply. So this leads to like a really super interesting question that I think we have to consider. Now, timing of all this, I get back into town, and I'm here in Indianapolis, and I'm brand new here, and I went to this, I was a part of the Church of Trinity. It was one location, one service, one thing all across town. And I'm there, and it wouldn't have been but about a year and a half later, and we would have opened Garfield Park downtown. The Lord was waking stuff up in me that would ultimately play out in a lot of ways. And over the course of the years, how many meals have we served downtown, Mike? Do you even know off the top of your head? It's got to be 40,000+ if I average the years out that we've served meals, we've served to the poor, leading people to Jesus, doing funeral for homeless people. Mike last week led 6 people to Jesus. Over the last couple of weeks, led 6 people to Jesus. Got baptisms coming up this next week. Listen, here's the deal. The Lord knew he had to start a passionate fire in my heart before we could ignite a city. This leads, I think, to a really important question that we have to ask, and one that even in the Summa, like Aquinas and others have wrestled with. Augustine and others even talk about this too. Like, here's the $10 million question with this. Are you ready? Do we have any control over our spiritual passion? Do we have any control of it? Are we literally just victim? I can't help the shows that I like. I can't help the friends that I like to spend time with. I can't help the fact that I don't have control over my schedule. I can't help it. Are we literally just victim of everything? Do we have any control over our spiritual passion? Well, can you change a slothful heart into a heart full of spiritual zeal? Can you change a slothful heart into a heart of spiritual zeal? Is that even possible? Well, the answer is yes, and it will probably require some prayer and discipline. Definitely will require some prayer and discipline. So here are 2 things that you can do. There are others that you can read if you really want to go deep into this and work through church history, but I'm going to give you 2 things today. These are not my subjective opinions. These are things that many wonderful saints of the past have written on. So here's one that you can do to aim a heart from spiritual indifference, slothfulness, into zeal. Here's one thing you can do. Pray that God would help you care again. Pray that God would help you care again. And I just want to pause on how important this is. So Ezekiel 36:26, and I will give you a new heart and a new spirit. I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I think it is incredibly important that one of the first things that we do, if you recognize spiritual indifference, slothfulness, you show up on a Sunday and you're like, on Sunday morning you wake up and you're like, not go, I don't really care. You drive past, though, I don't care. Like the things that God cares about and seems to want us to care about, you have learned to be indifferent to. I think one of the first things that you should do is literally go before the Lord and say, God, wake my heart up. Wake it up. Wake my heart up. Break my heart for the things that breaks your heart. Help me to care again. Ezekiel 36:26 is a prayer. I love it. It really is. It is, in a sense, it is about receiving. It is a prayer for passion. It is about receiving a heart that is tender towards God. It's God's promise to take what is numb and make it responsive, to turn stubbornness into softness, to make space in us for love, joy, conviction, and worship again. Awake it in me, God. You pray for it. The second thing that I would say is this. Invest in the things that you should care about. Invest in the things that you should care about. Matthew, this is an important text. Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, I get it. Every time the pastor talks about money, somebody gets offended. Okay, here's the deal. Jesus talks about money a ton. We've talked about this a lot too. And where you put your treasure is where your heart starts to care. If you want to start caring about something, you invest in it. You do. It wakes your heart up. Not long ago, I had somebody, they were talking to me about cryptocurrency. I was like, man, I'm very educated, but everything that I read was written like 1,000 years ago. So I don't know what's the latest, greatest. So they were explaining cryptocurrency and how it's all changing in the world and digital assets. And they're talking about stuff with me. They're like, you really should include cryptocurrency in your retirement portfolio. I'm thinking, really? I don't know. And so I went and I bought like 1/1000th of a Bitcoin. It was like $25, just curious. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll buy a little tiny chunk of a Bitcoin and put it in there just out of curiosity. And even with a little tiny investment, guess what happened? I started checking on it. Is it going up? Is it not? Even just a little bit. Because where you put your treasure, your heart grows. Where you put your treasure, your heart grows. You start to pay attention to it. You start to care about it. You're curious about how it works. Here's the deal. If you don't care about the poor, give to the poor. Serve the poor. And you know what will happen? You'll start getting curious about what the city is doing for the poor and how the church is engaging with the poor and how maybe you can help with the poor more. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You're not a victim. You almost can use your generosity as a tool of discipleship. Matthew 6:21 isn't primarily, to say it really clear, Matthew 6:21 isn't primarily about money. It's about a tool, investing, that can shape what you care about. What you put your treasure, talent and time into, you will begin ultimately to care about. Aquinas says it really well. Man, I hope this, I try to retinker with this quote because the gap between today's day and age and that day and age makes it a little bit unclear. But this is the idea from Aquinas. He says this: because spiritual joy is lost, man seeks compensation. And what does he mean by this? Investment and joyful reward. Where are you looking for joyful reward and investment? You're looking for it in other things because spiritual joy is lost. He's totally right. Here's what I want you to do this morning. If you would, pull the next steps card out. I'm going to give you just a second to do it. They're in the back of the chair in front of you. And I just want to ask a couple questions this morning before we close out. Or ask a question before we close out. Even now, I was thinking about the announcement a minute ago, and I ought to circle back around to this before I finish the message. How many here have noticed that eggs have gotten expensive? I actually eat a lot of eggs and egg whites. It's like I by nature am a fairly disciplined individual. I probably annoy my family more about it. So eggs are on my I will eat it list. And so when eggs got expensive, I felt it. Like an egg price doubles. Well, if you want to feel the multiplication of eggs getting expensive, serve thousands and thousands of meals every week, right? Like, we're feeling inflation. The church is feeling it because of how much generosity work that we do and missions work we do in the city. And I just ought to add this. I'm going to sprinkle this on top. If you are brand new here and your heart is easily offended by conversations about money, I'm going to let you off the hook. This isn't for you. If your heart is easily offended about money, I'm letting you off the hook. This isn't for you. But I do want to speak to my spiritual champions, right? The ones that are when I walk in a room, I will do everything I can to make things better. I want to speak to you for a second. So if you're here and you're easily offended and you're really anxious and you don't like it and you're let off the hook. This isn't for you. You can ignore the next minute and a half. But if you're here and you're I want to be a difference maker. I just want to be really clear. Even your church, guys, with the inflation that's hitting, we are putting together the budget for next year and going through downtown, and we serve thousands of meals. This is getting really expensive. And to anybody out there, listen, on top of your already generosity, I would love it. In fact, our Easter give is super aimed at our downtown mission to the poor to continue to do more because it's getting expensive to do that stuff right now. And so if there are people here and you're hey, I'll help cover the gap. That'd be awesome. Literally, that'd be awesome. We would love it if a few people would step up. Amen, Mike? Amen. And so we're going to do it. Now, to hear me clearly, my resolve is so strong, I will do whatever I can to make a way. But it'd be sure nice if I didn't have to carry this with my own creativity, and I could get a few people to help lift my arms up too and make this all go. So if you're here and you're like, hey, speaking of generosity of the poor, we do a ton of generosity of the poor. We're leading people to Jesus. We're baptizing them in the name of Jesus. We're serving meals to those that are, like, if you want to help out with that, we would love the help, especially with us sitting in this wild inflation season that we're currently in. All right, that was a little side note. On your next steps cards, I basically want to ask this question. Is there an idea, and I really want you to sit on this for a moment, is there an idea to consider or a decision to make that God is putting on your heart? Is there an idea to consider or a decision to make that God is putting on your heart? And I just want to give you, I know silence is so awkward in our day and age, but especially in this Lenten season, I want to give you the gift of quiet reflection for a moment. And so I mean this, as a gift, on the next steps card, just answer this. Is there an idea to consider or a decision to make that God is putting on your heart? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds or a minute of just quiet in this Lenten season. We fast from the noise. All right, you ready? We can do this.